Many of you will be familiar with Just Stop Oil. They are a climate campaign group that have become known for their disruptive and vibrant direct action tactics. And today I'm going to be speaking to Chloe Naldrett, who is involved in the group. And we're going to be discussing some of those tactics, but also what Just Stop Oil's plans for mobilisation are throughout 2023. But often a lot of the media, it doesn't very effectively report on the demands and the things that Just Stop Oil is calling for. So what I wanted to do to kick things off is to give you space to talk through for us what the demands are of Just Stop Oil.
Yeah, great. So shall I just start off by telling you a little bit about me so that you've all got a bit of context. So yeah, my name's Chloe. I'm a mum. I live in Bristol. I am a theatre producer in the real world. I work in the arts. And I've been involved in firstly XR and then JSO for the last year, but Extinction Rebellion for about the last 3 or 4 years. And really, I stepped into climate activism because I've got 2 kids, and I realised that I could no longer look them in the eye and promise to keep them safe. And that for me was a sort of horrifying moment, and a moment of realising that as a parent, I had to take some responsibility for that, and I really had to step up and do everything that I possibly could to protect them and their future. And you know, I come from a very conventional background, a very conventional upbringing. I'm a sort of straight A student, ex-girl guide kind of person. I've been a really good girl all my life. So the idea of stepping into civil disobedience for me was a really, really big step to make. And I mean, look, you know, I live a very middle class life in lots of ways. You know, you have to really squint at me to put me in the bracket of sort of, you know, hippie or whatever we all like to get, whatever particular term we like to get thrown at us from the media. But yeah, so you know, I've really sort of come into this from my perspective as a parent out of a sense of things are going to get really bad, and they're going to get really bad for my children and for everyone else's children, and for many people's children, they're really bad now. So that's, I guess that's how I came into all of this. So Just Stop Oil has been around for about the last year, and the demand of the campaign is very clearly, we can have no more fossil fuels, and we cannot as a country issue any more oil and gas licenses. And in making that demand, we are repeating what's being said by the IPCC, what's being said by the UN, what's being said by the International Energy Agency. They are all saying that if we are to stay below 1.5 degrees of global warming, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. We have to leave it in the ground. And that also means that we need to be mobilising around renewable energy, around insulating our homes and our businesses, and really getting behind public transport as opposed to private vehicles. But our government, knowing what it knows about the science of what's happening and about the risks that we are, we are right on the edge of, we're right on the edge of these sort of global tipping points. They're seeking to license 100 new oil and gas fields in the North Sea. And as we heard just before Christmas, they're planning to open a new coal mine. So, you know, there's never been a more important time to stand up and make this demand.
So thank you for setting out quite clearly there the demands of Just Stop Oil, because I think that's often what gets missed in the conversation. But I wanted to move on now to talk about, it's a new year, we're in 2023. I wanted to get from you a sense of what Just Stop Oil's planned mobilisations are for the year ahead.
Yeah, great. So the way that Just Stop Oil mobilises is we do talks online twice a week, and they are accessible to absolutely everybody. There is one at 5 o'clock today, so people could literally come out of this meeting and sign up and be in a Just Stop Oil talk this afternoon. And those talks, they go through the social science. They look at where we are in terms of the science of the climate crisis, but they also look at the social science. And they look at the sort of history of protest and how important it is as a means of speaking to our government about injustice. And they also provide some space for discussion. So they're really lively, really engaging talks, and they're all on our website. There's a calendar on our website demonstrating which will tell you where they are, when they're happening online, and they also happen around the country. So in most big cities, there's a talk every week or so. So that is a really major sort of pillar of the mobilisation. We also offer, for anyone that would like to get involved, we offer non-violent direct action training. So one of the really important things to say about anyone who's thinking about getting involved in Just Stop Oil is that you are trained and supported all the way through that process. So before you get into an action, when you're in the action, and then when you come out of the action at the other end. So all of that sort of is discussed. People go into that situation feeling really prepared and supported. And over the next year, we'll continue to use the sort of variety of tactics that we've seen over the last year. You mentioned some of them: the things at sports events, the actions in art galleries, the actions at oil terminals. All of that sort of ecology will continue to be part of our protest. But I think we're also going to see some actions in regionally around the country as well as taking disruptive action to the centres of power.
I want to move on a little bit to talk about the impact that Just Stop Oil has had. So you mentioned earlier that it's been around for around a year. What do you think the impact that your campaigning and actions has had so far on the fight for climate justice? And how do you think that the actions of groups like Just Stop Oil can be scaled to meet the needs of the challenge? Because, we're in a situation where time is running out. We have governments failing to act, and often, as you've pointed out, with the licensing of new, granting of new oil licenses, actively making things much, much worse. So what's the impact you've had already, and how can your activities be scaled so that we can achieve what we need to achieve?
So yeah, it's a campaign that's been around for a year, and in the course of that year, there was a survey done at the end of last year, and we believe that 92% of people in this country have heard of Just Stop Oil, which for a campaign that's only been around for a year is absolutely remarkable. And that really is a reflection on the nature of that action that we've taken, and the sort of the total unignorability of it. There was also, in this sort of same study, actually I think it was a study done by the New Statesman, 38% of people actively, positively support the demands of Just Stop Oil, which is twice the number of people that don't support it. And of course, there's a group in the middle who probably would say, I support your demands, but I don't support your action. So, and that's very common. So a huge amount of public awareness and an awful lot of public support, certainly for what we're calling for, which again, just to repeat, is what's being called for by the UN and by the International Energy Agency and by the IPCC. There have been some major policy wins. So the Labour Party has essentially adopted Just Stop Oil's demands as part of its policy moving forward. It said it won't be licensing new oil and gas fields. And Lloyds Bank and HSBC Bank have announced in recent months that they will no longer support or no longer provide funding for new oil and gas projects. And that is massive. That is absolutely enormous. And those banks haven't done it because they've suddenly grown a moral conscience. They're doing it. They're making that kind of statement because of the pressure that's been put on them by Just Stop Oil, but also by Extinction Rebellion and by Money Rebellion, and by the sort of general protest community. It's an immense win, I think. We know that 8,000 people have attended our talks over the last year. 3,300 of those people have been willing to go through the training process with us, and over 1,700 have said that they're willing to be arrested. And there have been over 2,000 arrests in the UK over the last year, and 150 people have spent time in prison, including me. I spent a week on remand in September after breaking an injunction at Kingsbury Oil Terminal. And then, of course, what we see is this sort of enormous international solidarity. So there are groups like Ultima Generazione in Italy and Letzte Generation, I can't pronounce it in German, Letzte Generation in Germany. So it's sort of rippling outwards. I think there's something so compelling about it, and it's being picked up by that sort of protest community elsewhere across Europe and beyond. But of course, what we need to keep doing is mobilising more people. And I think what's really interesting about what's happening at the moment is the way that there's this coalition of protest groups coming together. So Extinction Rebellion have a an ambition of having 100,000 people outside Parliament on the 21st of April, and absolutely Just Stop Oil will be behind that as well. That's good for all of us. We will all be there alongside the Greenpeace and the Friends of the Earth and the Green Party and all those other slightly less radical sides of the movement.
You mentioned Extinction Rebellion in your last answer. And at the start of this year, some people will have seen that Extinction Rebellion put out a statement saying that they were going to be scaling back on their disruptive action and no longer taking disruptive action as part of their campaigns. And Just Stop Oil, in another statement, has accused Extinction Rebellion of quitting by stepping back from disruptive action. So why do you think the kind of provocative, disruptive campaigning that Just Stop Oil has become known for is still important?
Well, we know it's the only thing that's ever worked. So all of the freedoms, privileges that we all take for granted now have been won through disruptive action. So I'm thinking there about the suffragettes, I'm thinking about the civil rights marchers, I'm thinking about the people that campaigned for LGBTQI plus rights. I'm thinking about the fact that we have weekends and weeks, workers' rights. So the only reason that we have those things in this supposedly progressive society that we live in are because people fought and people were prepared to go to prison and people were prepared to put their lives on the line, and people did put their lives on the line for all of those things. So, we know that it is disruptive action that gets the attention of the public and that then shifts public opinion to put pressure on the people that make our laws. And we also know that those movements don't need to be popular. They don't need to be movements where, everybody goes, gosh, yes, I think the suffragettes are so wonderful. I think Martin Luther King's wonderful. In fact, the absolute truth of that is that people were violently opposed to the suffragettes. Martin Luther King was absolutely derided. Peter Tatchell was called the most hated man in Britain. So, we know at the moment, well, in the moment that people are raising those issues, they are not popular. But we do know also that they shift public opinion, in a really, really important way towards achieving our aim. So disruptive action is absolutely non-negotiable, and JSO will continue to do what we're doing, and we'll continue to do it knowing that it's the right thing to do, given how fast we need to see real change. But I think this statement of XR's, I think was absolutely brilliant. And I do I came up through XR, and I sort of still straddle both those camps to some extent. I'm still doing various projects with XR. And it's sort of the genius of that was kind of the sort of clickbait nature of that announcement. Absolutely sort of playing the tabloids at their own game, and they achieved 1 million social media likes when any previous message prior to that, the highest was something like 700,000. They have more sign-ups in a day than they would normally have in a week, and I think the genius of that announcement is, and actually when you look into it, they're not saying we're going to stop disruptive protest at all. They're saying we're going to stop disrupting the public for a period of time in order to mobilise. We will still be doing actions that are targeted at the centres of power, but the focus of the next 4 months prior to this really important date on the 21st of April, and I really urge everyone to put 21st of April in their diary and be part of 100,000 people converging on Parliament to demand action on the climate emergency for our future. But there needs to be over the next 100 days a massive outreach project, and that's what they've given themselves the space to do. And what's really interesting is it's working, because immediately what it's doing is putting XR in a place where people who are concerned about the climate but absolutely are not going to go and climb a gantry on the M25 and are nowhere near even possibly sort of stepping out into an arrestable situation, they go, oh, XR's now in a more moderate place. I think I could get behind that now. And it's having an immensely positive effect at bringing more people into the movement. So I absolutely think that whilst I think there was a lot of people who felt, oh, hang on a minute, I didn't know we'd quit. And that was quite challenging for them. But I think it's an absolutely brilliant piece of, promotion that they've done. And I think it will really work and really help. But the protest movement needs to continually evolve. And this is a sort of acknowledgement that an awful lot of the people who are very keen on going and doing, very spicy actions have already sort of migrated towards Insulate Britain or to JSO, which leaves Extinction Rebellion with this opportunity to do something much broader and much more sort of centrist.
So I'm going to go to some questions from the chat now, and there are some brilliant ones that have come in. So I'm going to go to Paul Beswick first. And Paul is asked, how does vandalising a Van Gogh painting help sway public opinion towards sustainability? Now, I'm sure you're probably sick of talking about this particular action, but for anyone who didn't, okay, good news. So for anyone who didn't see that action, essentially it was a action that took place in a art gallery that was displaying a Van Gogh painting and some, I think it was two Just Stop Oil activists threw a tin of soup over the glass casing of that painting, and it caused a big furore. So Chloe, how does that help sway public opinion towards your cause?
So Van Gogh himself said, it's not the language of painters that we should listen to, it's the language of nature. And I think anybody who is outraged by that action needs to really ask themselves why they're more outraged about that than they are about the fact that 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater and 35 million people have been displaced, and why they're more outraged about that than the fact that every 36 seconds a person dies in the Horn of Africa because of the impact that global warming is having on that part of the world. The painting wasn't destroyed. As you say, it was behind glass. It's been cleaned. It's back on display. It was back on display virtually immediately. It's absolutely fine. But it was a very controversial action, and it took a lot of discussion, I think, to interpret it for people. So that's why I'm really delighted to have this conversation, because I think it's something we need to keep talking about and really keep challenging and keep asking ourselves these questions about. But the profile gained by that action was absolutely, it couldn't have been done any other way. And that's why when we go 92% of people have heard about Just Stop Oil, they might have heard about Just Stop Oil and go, those horrible vandals, I hate them, but they're still going, Just Stop Oil is still going into their brain. And that's what's really important. So that was the most effective way of making sure that people heard that demand with no damage to the picture.
So I've got another brilliant question from the chat, which is completely different, but I think it's a really valuable one. And so Ben Samuel has said, Emma Goldman, the American anarchist, was famously quoted as saying, "If I can't dance there, it is not my revolution." So wanted to get your thoughts on joy in the climate movement and amongst the climate crisis.
Oh, that's such a lovely question. And I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And I don't want to just be enraged all the time. I'm absolutely livid so much of the time that I absolutely need that joy to counterbalance it. And I get that so wonderfully from the activist movement, from the climate movement. I've had that since I joined XR, and I get it in spades from Just Stop Oil, because the people are just remarkable. The people are, I mean, we're all absolutely ordinary people, but something about the way that we all come together invites us to bring our best selves. And the sense of acceptance and of sort of platonic love. And I apologise for my child in the background, who's clearly picked a brilliant moment to start kicking football around. But that sort of sense of love and community and camaraderie, and I think that the experience of being with people who absolutely understand where you are in your head and where you are in your heart I haven't ever experienced that anywhere else. So I think, I think probably a lot of people come into the movement for the climate, and then they're like, well, I'm staying because the people are so great. And people are from these completely diverse and different backgrounds, socioeconomic, as well as geographic, as well as the jobs that they do, as well as, being from diverse communities. And just that sense of you are just accepted for who you are and for what you bring. And it's just a really, really beautiful thing. So the movement is totally full of joy. And I find as well that I find the real world quite a difficult place to be at the moment. I find ordinary conversation quite challenging because of the level of willful denial that is going on. Even if people go, oh yes, the climate's a problem, they don't really want to have to face the facts of it. And I I find it so refreshing to be with people who absolutely understand it and are willing to do what it requires of us. So yeah, there is, and actually one of the things I didn't mention about the mobilisation is that there are social events as well. So as well as all the sort of training that we do and all of the listening to the science and responding to that, there are social events which are really about building community.
So before I let you go off and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, you've talked a little bit so far about, I guess, Just Stop Oil's, I guess, ongoing mobilisation, so with the calls and so on. But is there anything you haven't mentioned yet about how people can get involved with Just Stop Oil in the coming months?
Yeah, so I'm obviously, please check the website. Please go and have a look on there. Look at the calendar of events. Please come along to one. No one's going to pressure you into sitting on a road as a result of coming to one of those talks. You're very welcome to just come along and listen and see where you sit with it and what you want to do. And I think a lot of people probably come to those talks and then they have to go and sit with it for a little while before they're ready to sort of take the next step. And that's absolutely fine. Just come and see what it's all about. And so you can sign up on the website to receive information from Just Stop Oil. That's so that I would say, that's an easy thing for everyone to go and do. But wherever you are in the country, there will be a Just Stop Oil community that you would be really welcome into joining.
Chloe, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see lots of people who are on this call at Just Stop Oil Action soon.